Good morning, everybody. I'm Big Chuck. Delighted to have you with me. Thank you so much for tagging along. A sunny day and 70 coming up. I've been talking about this morning. I post, I'm sure Jeff, you saw this, that's where it started, was I always post bucket lists up about once a week on my Facebook page, and I know you saw it, and I've always had on my bucket list Lourdes, the spiritual home in France. We all know the story of 1858 and the Vision of Mary. We've seen movies and we've read books and all of that. And I've always wanted to go there. Jim saw me post that and he contacted me and he said, I'm going there. And I said, well, take pictures and come back. So I saw him yesterday and I invited him on here today. Jim Ballou, who is the Oneana Framer of Dreams, across the street at the Principally Prince store from the radio station. Did it live up to everything that you expected?
Yes, it certainly did. It was difficult to leave. I really didn't want to leave such a place. One thing I learned this time around was that the processions at night each have their own character. Okay. They're different from each other.
And these are thousands of people in a candlelight procession at night.
Yes. They call it the Domain. It's a big site, sort of like Washington, D.C. in the sense that it's all free. So there's a 124-acre site with the grotto in it and a cathedral built above it, and there are 22 other worship sites you can use if you wish. But yes, each night thousands of people gather. For instance, on the Tuesday, I was there last Tuesday night, there was probably about 8,000 people. The next night, Wednesday night, all of a sudden there were that many people plus about 1,800 people in wheelchairs that just showed up that day. And there were 2 volunteers for each wheelchair. So
you're looking at a big crowd.
Yes, and also an extraordinary amount of giving and kindness.
I noticed in your pictures, I followed your posts while you were over there. First of all, as I was talking to my listeners this morning, it's funny because I always said, in my mind's eye, Cooperstown, New York has a population of 2,000. They get 300,000 visitors a year. That odd ratio of population to visitors, I thought could never be beat. I did a little research on Lourdes. Lourdes is a population of about 15,000. They get 8 million visitors a year.
Yeah,
how do they handle it?
Well, Lourdes is the second most visited city in the country.
After
France.
Paris.
After Paris. And the figures I had seen are between 5 and 6 million. But it's all set up for it. That's the remarkable thing. It's all set up. There's wonderful hotels. One of the vignettes I experienced there was the kindness and dedication of the locals. One of the things about the French culture that struck me well, both in Paris and in Lourdes, was that even when their jobs got difficult, like even if you're just a waiter in a restaurant, you could see they were feeling frustration in the moment, but they would rally and 10 minutes later recover, and they loved their jobs. The people were not resenting their jobs. They had a more mature view of the rhythm of a shift. And that was delightful because sometimes you feel like you're being burdensome to a waiter, and he comes over and assures you that you're not.
But there's a whole legion that is dedicated to the visitors of Lourdes, right?
Yes.
I mean, I noticed that in your pictures and in your videos. I was struck by it, actually. I seen there were just people in wheelchairs, people on crutches, people with walkers, people being carried, people, coming in there for obvious reasons, for hope and inspiration and healing powers and all their beliefs of the grotto. But each one of them is being tended by somebody.
That's right. And all of these volunteers are there on their own dime. The way it works is you come for 2 weeks, I think it is, and on your own dime, and you help people, and they organize it. The Catholic Church, has taken its knocks over the years, but there are certain things they do right, and this is one of them. And the water is, people go for the water, and so you can drink the water, but you can also get fully immersed in it as well. So there's a section full of baths where a lot of truly...
And this is what water, Jim? This is the water from the grotto?
Yes, yeah, the spring water that began when Mary directed Bernadette to basically scratch in the ground and wash herself. And during that particular apparition, it was kind of embarrassing because Bernadette did scratch in the ground and put mud on her face, and everybody was appalled. And she sort of went home feeling discouraged. And about a couple of hours later, the water started to spring up in that hole. And then it dawned on one of Bernadette's close neighbors who had a very sickly child. It just came to her, quote unquote, and she ran down with her very sickly child and dunked it in the water. She was the first one to realize that that was what the water was for. And that child was just an infant and was going to die, and it sat up and smiled for the first time that day.
And then the crowds came.
Because you know what it was? This is an overlooked thing. It was the state of ecstasy that Bernadette was in that was so convincing. Remember, she was the only one who could literally see Mary, but the look on her face, the amount of radiance that was coming from her, anyone who was there had no doubt. And also remember, it went on for 18 times in fewer than 6 months.
All right, and we go to the city of Lourdes. We have I'll call it a historic district for lack of anything else, of the dozens of churches and places of worship and sights to see and all of that. Take me to the grotto. How is that done? How is it organized? Is it a ticket? Is it... can you dally there? Can you? What do you see? What is it?
Yes, it's completely free. The entire complex is free, and you can go pretty much at any hour of the day except the real deep middle of the night. But yes, it's you just get in line and you get to walk through it, and depending on the rhythms of the day and the week of the year, it may take a little longer, but you can dally there. We were drinking the Lourdes water. We had it in our bottles all week long, and so you can easily go through. There's benches to sit on if you just want to sit and feel the vibe and watch the others. It's extremely relaxed. There's plenty of elbow room and all kinds of nice places to sit and read and talk and do whatever you want. It's organized just so superbly well that everyone has a good experience.
It's in I would say a remote part of France. I'd forgotten where it was. I actually thought it was on the coast of the Mediterranean, but it's not. It's kind of tucked away, like by Andorra and the Pyrenees, and closer to the Atlantic than it is to the Mediterranean. What is it like? What is Lourdes like?
It's a mountain city. The Pyrenees are the mountain chain that creates the border of Spain and France. So it's in the south of France, and so it has a different type of climate. It's a little more rainy there, though it wasn't the few days we were there. It's a real mountain town, but it's on a smaller scale. Like living here, we are in the foothills of the Catskills. It's not the Alps. The Pyrenees are like a younger brother to the Alps, and so you have terrific things like there are some incredible caves in the region that you can go visit as a day trip, and the rock formations. And the grotto has, if you look on my timeline, just go to my Facebook page, Jim Belleau, Belleau. It's just loaded with all my photos. You can see the beauty of the rock formations, which is one of the reasons I think it was chosen. Plus the name Lourdes is very close to the word Lord. The river is the Gave River. If you say that in English, it means to give. So that's my reason for being there, is to connect these dots. I'm going to write a book connecting my work with A Course in Miracles and the story of Lourdes. And
is it more? I've heard it's more Spanish than French.
No.
Did you not see that?
No,
okay.
It's French.
I mean, it's close to the Spain border.
It is, but you're in a French city.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Bigorian French, which is a region, and so the cooking and what's available is different than what's in Paris and probably a lot of the other parts of the country. If you like foie gras, I don't know how to say it, that's the place to be. But the food is superb no matter where you go.
So when you gave me a brochure that you'd had, tell me about the underground church that seats 20,000 people.
Yes, that's one of the amazing things. You wander around and you walk into this doorway, and all of a sudden you're in an underground church that literally can hold 20,000 people. So, and you wouldn't.
That you cannot see it.
No, it looks kind of like a soccer field above, with a strip of concrete going down the middle. It's an inviting place to go lay in the sun. But it's actually this church which is cleverly laid out. The design and artwork is also tastefully done. I was really deeply impressed. There's in that church there is abstract art illustrating the Stations of the Cross, and the levels of beauty in this art are amazing. You wouldn't think the Catholic Church would go for it, but they do, and extremely worthwhile. It's well worth going.
Were you able to attend a service?
No. I did a little bit. The routine at the grotto is after the procession, which is 1 hour, goes from 9 to 10. At night. Then you can go back and visit the grotto if you wish. And when everyone who has wanted to walk through does, then they have a mass in some particular language. So I stayed for a little bit of an Italian mass, just because it's just such a lovely place to hang out.
Sure.
But we didn't happen to run across a service, so we didn't.
Do they, is this historic area, religious area, whatever you want to call it, is that people or populated with restaurants, cafes, and hotels, or is that not there?
No, it is. It's a wild mix. It's almost on the surface. It
right
looks,
in and among the churches and the holy places.
No, the domain is in its own separate thing. But right across the street is the most amount of kitsch and souvenirs.
I'll bet they have everything, don't they?
Yes, if you want to buy a rosary, that's the place to go. Because that's during the processions. That's what's sung is the rosary.
Okay.
In several languages over loudspeakers. So to witness 10,000 people holding candles in front of their faces as at dark, with singing the rosary all together as they process, is remarkable. If that doesn't move you, you can't be moved.
Sure.
But yes, it's on the surface it looks a bit schizophrenic, because you'll see big tubs of plastic Marys with screw tops on her head to put the water in, and there's a lot of that. But so what? It's something you want to bring back with you, So there's so many different ways you can, through clothing, scarves, all kinds of souvenirs.
Sure.
And just the vibe of the people who own these businesses is so superb. They're not out to get.
Not hucksters. Really.
Yeah.
They just want to contribute to your experience.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you? How do you get there? Do you fly to Lourdes?
Well, that was one thing that was surprising, and I'm glad I get to mention this, because the travel from here to Paris was brutal. It was much harder than I expected, and that's because from here, if you want to leave from Albany, they have to fly you to a hub, and then from the hub you fly to Paris. And It's nuts. I don't want to go into the details, but both coming and going was brutal. So
both your entrance and exit were Paris.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and so I really thought a lot about this, and the best experience we had in traveling was taking the train from Paris to Lourdes. That was delightful.
Okay.
Yes, that train was going 317 kilometers an hour for the first third of the journey, which is 180 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. It was a delight. It's comfortable.
How much of a trip is that, Paris to Lourdes?
4.5 hours.
4.5 hours.
At that speed.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's all the way across the country, which is delightful.
Yeah.
You know, they actually clean the windows and, you know, let you know what's going on. But what we're going to do next time, I found a way to get to Lourdes taking only one plane. We're going to drive to Montreal, take a direct flight from Montreal to Lisbon, Portugal. Closest, shortest flight. And that way you're not dealing with the hassle of Paris being so busy.
Then how far is the trip from Lisbon to...
I don't literally know, but it would be less than a day trip. You have to realize by train... everything's accessible. The train system works so superbly.
Yeah.
So we'll just hang out in Lisbon and get for a day or two and get used to the time change, and then take a train to Lourdes. You know, take a train at 10 in the morning, be there at dinner time.
Yeah.
And see all the Portuguese and Spanish countryside on the way.
Neat.
And then actually exit the same way.
Did you notice a lot of Americans?
Yes, there's a lot of everywhere. You're just dozens and dozens of nationalities around you all the time. Not as many Asians as we get, but they were well represented, but not as many as we get here at our big sites. But a lot of Spanish, Portuguese, Italian countries come representing themselves. They'll have large delegations of people coming from, like a whole village will go to Lourdes every year at a certain time.
I see.
There was a Dutch delegation the first night we were there.
Did you get to ask, is there one specific date in the Lourdes calendar that is bigger than any other?
Yes, that's the Feast of the Assumption on August 15th. And I was actually in 2003. I was there in 2003.
Well, weren't you just... Well, no, this is October.
Yeah, we were...
just got back. Yeah. That's right.
Yes. I don't know if anyone remembers Chira Massey. Do you remember Chira Massey?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. Back in 2003, I was working with her because she had cancer, and I was helping with some healing prayer work, and she gifted me the trip to Lourdes spontaneously, which I now see has a design in it. And so...
Was it for August 15th?
Yeah, she designed it so that we were there at the peak of the year. So I literally witnessed processions with about 100,000 people. And it was just as comfortable as if there were 10,000.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's a stream of light and sound. You know,
I saw your videos. It's hard to comprehend.
It is.
In the 4 inches by 4 inches, you know.
Yeah.
It looked unlike anything, I think, that we have in our country.
Yeah, it's a global site for faith and joy. That's the thing. It's obviously a place for faith. But the amount of joy, you have to realize that healing has many dimensions. And I had wounds from growing up Catholic. I had emotional wounds from being in Catholic school. And when I went to Lourdes in 2003, I spent 5 days there just sort of bopping around, not really doing anything in particular. And I realized about 2 years later that all those wounds were healed in that 1 week. And so it sort of set me free to view Catholicism without pain. And so to be in Lourdes now in this state of mind is an absolute treat.
Well, I got to tell you, I can't wait to get there. And I'm sure you've told your story many times, and everybody says, I can't wait to get there, because it's an unusual place, first of all. It's also one of those places that, you know, even at my age, it's something I've heard of all my life.
Yeah.
I mean, I was told that story in catechism when I was 7.
Yeah.
And now 60 years later, I'm still kind of, you know, betwixt to get there.
It's the real deal. Yes,
Yeah.
it's like going to a national park with the emotional dimension thrown in. The Song of Bernadette is a Catholic classic, but it was written by an Austrian Jew.
Okay.
Yeah, who was trapped in Lourdes with the Nazis trying to execute him, and he vowed to God. He said, "If you get me out of here, if you get me into Spain, I will write her story." And so this Austrian Jew named Franz Werfel wrote her story and published it in 1941, and it became the Catholic classic.
Yeah, Academy Award winner, a great movie.
Yeah, the story is better than the movie shows, actually.
But I think that was a grand introduction to that story. Obviously for many people seeing that movie for the first time.
Yeah.
Well, that is great, Jim. I am so glad that you were able to come over and give us a few minutes of your time. And Lourdes.
Yes, so I would say definitely go. It's absolutely worth it.
I wonder if they have is Bernadette celebrated there? I mean, do they have something on her birthday? Do they have something on the day of the first apparition? I mean, these must be landmark days on the Lourdes calendar where people just pour in.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt myself. Has the Pope ever been there?
Yes, there are pictures of the popes there. They go there just to nourish themselves. I mean, yeah, it's like certainly to stamp the approval of the whole thing, but this is bigger than any one person. It's just this. I mean, if it's on a global scale, that's the reason it's so powerful, is because there's no other place on Earth that has focused this energy quite this way. Fatima probably is close, but I've never been there. And so
where is that? Is that Portugal?
That's in, I think it's in Portugal. Yeah, I'm not that sure.
I'd be curious to see how they do it there, too,
Yeah, but I can't imagine the mountains sort of encircle you. It's the mountain. It's like the difference between Florida and living here. It's so nice having the mountains rather than it just being flat.
I agree.
And so there's something about the entire thing, having that nice wide river, right behind you all the time when you're in the ground.
I used to feel that way. I lived in Texas for 5 years, and it was wonderful, and I loved it, and it was an unusual culture, and it was all that, but it was too wide open. There was no feeling of community. I mean, it was like, oh look, I'm in New Braunfels. Isn't this great? But where does it end and where does it start? We're here, where Franklin ends and where Franklin starts. Where Gilbertsville. You know what I'm saying? It's just kind of like the flatness takes away those borders that we like.
Yes. So I would encourage anyone to contact me through my Facebook page or through my shop.
Or stop in.
My shop.
Principally Prince is right across the street from the radio station, right here in the bottom of the old Oleana Theater. Stop in and see Jim if you want any more information, or maybe he can give you a few tips on how to get there, or answer some questions for you about his trip to Lourdes. Jim, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.